Welcome to Commander Central, the podcast featuring the three prettiest people in broadcasting. And we have 46 more shows until we start doing video, and we have to actually prove that. So until then, just assume it's true and not at all fake news. I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.
Today we're going to talk about lands, utility lands in particular, which we mentioned on last week's show as we did a little micro segment on it. So as I was preparing my notes for this, though, I'm like, man, this feels a little bit familiar. And I didn't tell you guys this. I went back and looked. We did a utility land show, episode 13.
Oh, I thought that we did too.
Damn.
So I went through then and listened to it so I did my notes first, and then I listened to it because I'm like, okay, because I kind of want to see what we changed. So I also made notes. I didn't show you guys this stuff with what our answers were first time through. So I want to kind of compare what our thinking. So I will have responses after we go through whatever these questions are.
Good thing a few of these are new lands that I have.
And actually, as I was going through, I'm like, oh, none of our answers I thought were like crazy, so it shouldn't be.
You don't run utility lands there. Done. Right. Show over. Good.
Right.
See everyone next week.
No, this was something that someone brought up they wanted to hear about. So.
And it constantly changes. Like even after seeing that, I was like, do I want to change the show? But I'm like, no, it's this kind of thing that updates constantly, and there's new lands. So
that was almost a year ago.
And that was a year ago, right? So I think it's worth doing utility lands part 2. But first, games we played this week. Anything fun go down? Chris and Max both had the 1v1 tournament.
Oh God!
And I haven't really heard how that went. I know Chris made top 4.
Yep, we took 4th place.
So how did your? So what deck were you playing? You're playing Mono Blue Tears and something else, right?
Yeah, my partner was playing Teferi Zephyr Mage, and I was playing Mogus, God of Slaughter.
So how did the games play out with those two commanders?
Pretty good. We played 2 mono red decks, and I was able to. And one of them was that 5-color warrior chick.
Najila.
She's tough.
And they're both playing mono red warrior decks pretty much.
Okay.
Because it says whenever a warrior
attacks,
you may have that person put it in a 1/1.
Oh, so it stacks their own team. Oh, I like that. I never would have thought of that.
So turn 3, they had us dead turn 3.
Dang.
I sudden spoiling to one of the guys.
Oh, wow.
So that turned off most of them. They still got the token triggers and came in at us. And then turn 4, I damnationed.
Nice.
And then my partner locked him out of the game, and we were able to win.
Nice. So turn 3 sudden spoiling to save the game. That's such a good card. I love that card.
It is. Like, I looked at my opening hand, and my partner looked at it. I'm like, oh, yeah, I think we're set. We just got to live to turn 3.
How about you, Max? How was yours?
We had a rough day.
So what were your decks?
I was playing Mono Blue Teferi Planeswalker.
Okay.
And my partner was playing Captain Sisay combo.
Okay. So in yours was, I'm guessing, Chain Veil of some sort?
Chain Veil, extra turns.
Okay.
Yep.
So your game didn't go quite as well, your games.
Game 1, we both kept not so great hands. I mulled to 6.
Ouch.
And apparently Leovold is really good.
Yes.
Because we got Reforged the Soul with a Leovold on the battlefield. So we're like, yeah, well, we have 2 cards and they have 14.
That's pretty much the end of that business.
Yep, but we let them play it out. Game 2, I got flooded. So that was fun. And the third game, we won against 2 people with kind of pre-con decks. So we felt a little bad,
right.
But at the same time, we took like 4 extra turns in a row, and then my partner just comboed off with Sisay,
which is what you had planned on doing the whole time.
Pretty much.
The biggest issue with your guys' 2 decks, in my opinion, was that you guys are both playing 2 combo decks.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And one should have been straight combo, because they had to split the mana rocks between them.
Right, that's true, yeah.
One should have been playing straight combo, and the other one should have been playing something to either support the combo or playing aggro to put pressure down, so they're more focusing on you than the combo player.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Next time,
yeah. Neither of you two got to play this Tuesday. I did. I played.
And the blue harmonize is called?
Concentrate. Right?
There we go.
I had to stop Chris. We were having a conversation. I can never remember what the blue harmonize was. I thought of you though, Chris, because like last game of the night, someone specifically asked me to play my Glissa deck. I'm like, oh sure, and I got it out. I'm like, this is probably a mistake because it was like 11:30, and it was. I missed so many triggers. It was ridiculous, and I eventually gave up.
Did they purposely ask because they knew you were going to miss
yes,
the triggers?
I don't know.
Is that what it was?
Maybe.
I wonder who asked.
It was against a Tuvasa deck. Enchantress, and things were going fine until he got out, and I've now forgotten the name of the card. It's the one that you see in Bruno Light of Alabaster decks a lot, where you can exile or you flicker out your it's an aura. You flicker out the card it's attached to, and then it comes.
Flickering Ward?
It's not Flickering Ward because that just gives a
I
protection.
can't think of that. It's a 2-mana enchantment. For 4 mana, you activate the ability.
And you flicker out out the creature till end of turn with all enchantments attached to it.
I played it in Euro a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I have no idea.
Flicker Form is the name of the enchantment. So you can spend 2 and 2 white. But we got in the position where he had that on Tuvasa, and I had a Maze of Ith out, and he had no Shroud or Hexproof. So he could swing in, and I would just untap it. But if I did anything to him, he could block with his Tuvasa with 120 auras on it, and then flicker it. So we eventually had an impasse, and I was like, I don't even know what in my deck can deal with this, because if I go get... Because I actually had tutors in hand. I'm like, if I go get Back to Nature, well, he'll just flicker it. So I would need to have... There was just no way we were going to kill one another.
Could you get both of your machine gun artifacts? Because they both deal 1 damage. Force him to like tap out his mana.
Sure, technically,
shoot?
if I could do a thing, and then he could do his Flicker Form trigger, and then I could respond to that trigger by
Shoot it
hitting
with another
something.
one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, what I needed was a Corrosive Grip.
Or Sudden Spoiling.
And I didn't have one in the deck. Or Sudden Spoiling. Sudden Spoiling wouldn't have worked either, though, because it just removes the ability from the creature, not from Flicker Form.
Yeah, but true. You would need something to...
All the enchantments.
Yep.
Would
It
stay on.
stacks. It goes. Okay, it looks at everything, removes their power and toughness, and then once
Everything
it checks
goes
again,
back.
all
Yeah.
the enchantments check, and then they do all their pump
So
again.
it made Tuvasa weaker and kept him from drawing a card when he attacked with it, but it didn't. Would have solved my problem. And eventually he was able to draw into, because he was able to draw a card every time Tuvasa attacked, at least, and then I would Maze of Ith it, but he still got the draw effect off.
Right.
So eventually he drew into enough things that I couldn't deal with the board state, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to scoop, because there's no way I'm ever going to, I could tutor for Damnation and slow him up again, but there was no way I was going to win the game. But it got in that position because it was late and I was just missing a gazillion triggers, so that was also my fault. But the MVP card for the night that I saw cast 2 different times over the course of like 4 games was Windgrace's Judgment, which we liked going into it.
One of the few cards
Yeah.
that we were psyched about out of the Jund deck.
Well, I made a note of it. The first time it was cast, it hit Eldrazi Monument, Parallel Lives, and Rhystic Study.
Nice.
Those are great
And
targets.
the second time it hit Lightning Greaves, Sylvan Library, and the Gitrog Monster.
That's just doing work.
That is awesome.
Yeah, at instant speed in response to a thing. Both times, one time it was me casting it, one time it was somebody else. But I'm like, just the amount of value. But even if nobody has a juicy, like those are all juicy targets for the most part. But even if nobody has a juicy target, and you're just like, yeah, I'll hit your Soul Ring, or I'll hit your whatever. I mean, like
You're
your
still
Felwar
hitting-
Stone.
Yep.
If you hit 3 Felwar Stones, that's probably still worth it.
Yeah. And that's just in a 4-player pod. I mean,
Right,
if
if
you're
you're
playing a 5 or a 6-player
Yeah.
game, that's doing a lot of work.
Yeah. But even
That's
if
an understatement.
But
Right?
even if, and there's plenty of times like I was like then looking at it, I'm like, man, even if I'm playing a 1-player game and I got to spend 5 mana to hit their commander at instant speed, that's not terrible.
No.
Like
No.
the worst case scenario isn't terrible. So that card was definitely like, we thought it was going to be good, but I was really happy to see it. I mean, 5 mana is a ton if you're playing CEDH level stuff. It's not going to be good, but like outside that, that's a really solid card. So
I have an MVP card as well.
Ooh, nice. What do you got, Chris?
It is a 1-mana artifact called Urza's Glasses.
To look at target player's hand?
Yep. That did work this weekend for me. I got it out in all the games but 1.
Okay.
And it was on either turn 1 or turn 2. Like I either drew it on turn 1 or my next turn or whatever. And just the ability to just look at people's hands and know exact information was priceless.
And it's 1 mana or is it 2? Did you say? I
1
forget.
mana.
And there's no activation cost. You just tap
No,
it.
just
right?
tap it.
Whenever you want to, repeatedly tasking and probe someone's hand. I guess
Yes.
it doesn't replace itself, but
No, it was phenomenal. I was just like, oh, I love this card.
and that's an original alpha card, I believe.
Yep, mine is revised because I collect revised cards.
Right.
My partner has a beta one. He's like, you should run this. I'm like, no, I'm gonna run the whiteboarder one just to bother you.
Yeah, that's an OG card. I actually was looking through, because I'm going to put a Library of Lang in my Varina deck if I wind up making it, because you have to discard whenever you draw cards off Varina. The Library of Lang lets you discard at the top of your library if there's a card you don't want in your yard. I'm like, oh, for 1 mana, I'll try that out in that Varina deck. There's good old stuff, like obviously, Fork is great, and obviously there's Wheel of Fortune is great, but like some of the cards you don't think of from the original set are still pretty good.
Speaking of that, I need a card, and I know Max doesn't have this. You might. Do you by chance have a Word of Command?
The black, 2 double black. I don't.
I'm gonna have to suck it up and buy one.
Yep.
They're so expensive.
Because that wasn't in revised. That was just in
Unlimited.
Right?
Yep.
Yeesh. I don't even want to know what that is right now. I bet it's $100.
We looked it
It
up.
is
It was like
$100.
yeah, just about $100.
Oof. What do you want that for?
1v1.
1v1. It's a cool card.
It's weird how it works. Like we were looking at all the erratas and everything.
Oh, God, yeah.
And,
We had
It's
to
like-
read it like 4 times the other night.
basically we compare it to a single target Mindslaver.
Right, yeah. Because you
Like-
can play one card from their hand
Yep.
without paying
And
the
they
mana
can't.
cost?
Yeah. No, you have to pay you
do,
pay their
okay.
mana to do it, but they can't respond to it until you put it on the stack.
Right.
Once they're like, "Yep, Word of Command resolves," then you look at their hand and they can't respond to anything.
Yeah, nice. I just want to see it get played because I know the card, but I've not seen it ever cast in a Commander game. Okay, well, if you have any additional questions about Word of Command or commentary, or want to tell us about how great your Windgrace's Judgment was, where can you reach us online and let us know that information, Chris?
You can find us on Twitter at CMDR Central, Facebook search us CMDR Central. If you're looking for like episodes or anything, you can find us on YouTube, CMDR Central searching, or online at cmdrcentral.com.
And we're also at Patreon at cmdrcentral.com. And speaking of that Word of Command, Chris, you can get that from flipsidegaming.com using promo code CMDR, and you'll get 10% off.
So it's only going to be $90 instead of
Totally
$100.
forgot about that. I'm
Yeah.
going to have to totally
Really?
see if they have one.
I just got a package from them this week, too. It was great. Had a Windgrace's Judgment in it.
Did we get any new Patreon supporters worth shouting out this week?
We do. We have Jerry Eldred. He's
Oh,
from-
I know Jerry. Hi, Jerry.
Yep. Hi, Jerry. He's been pretty active in our Slack as well.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
thank you for the support.
Okay, let's talk about utility lands again.
Again.
Maybe we'll do this every year. Every year we'll do a utility lands show.
It's like return to utility lands.
Right, return to utility. There we go.
Oh, it's going to change every year. I
Well,
mean, there's going to be
guilds
so
of
many
utility
more.
lands next year. So for the purposes of this conversation, let's define a utility land, and I think we're going to just say it's a land that you run for a purpose other than generating mana. So Arcane Lighthouse makes mana, but you're not running Arcane Lighthouse to generate a colorless mana. You're running it so you can remove Hexproof and Shroud from stuff. Versus Ancient Tomb or Crystal Vein or something, those are mana generators. They don't do another thing. So those I wouldn't count as utility lands. I think, well, that's what we'll kind of use for this conversation.
Agreed. Yep, mine pretty much the way that I summed it up was it's a land that taps for mana, but it also has an additional ability. So it's got a dual effect land.
And that's the main reason you're running it versus like the Scry lands from Theros. You're not running them for the Scry, you're running them as dual lands, and the Scry is meant to offset them coming into play tapped.
Gross.
They feel so bad on turn one, though. It's like, yes, this is when I want to do it, but I don't want to scry on turn one.
Right. Unless you're like, this is a kind of a sketchy hand, maybe, but I kind of want to keep it, but I have a Scry land, so I can at least see if there's a land on top of the next card. That's the one time it's not that bad. So the first thing I'll ask you guys is, if you're building a brand new deck, what is that first utility land you put in the deck?
Mine basically depends on color. If I'm doing, I have one for each color that I put in,
Sure.
but we'll just do for the basis of your question, guaranteed Ghost Quarter, Strip Mine, Tech Edge, Wasteland, Field of Ruin. Some of that is going to end up in the deck.
Okay.
Not sure which one, depends on how the deck needs to be played.
Yeah, I'm totally agreeing with Chris. My first ones are always Strip Mine and Ghost Quarter, and then Reliquary Tower.
I would go with Strip Mine as well. It's probably the first thing I add because there's no situation where in a deck I don't want at least one land destruction land, if not 2 or 3. Some things you're like, maybe I don't need, this Bajuka Bog or this whatever, but like I just always want a land destruction land. Well, our answers last time around for that question, because I'd asked that, were pretty much the same. You guys both said land destruction lands and both said Reliquary Tower. Whereas Chris didn't say Reliquary Tower this time.
It's gonna get better
Is that
later.
So I agree with those. And you know what? I like and we've discussed Reliquary Tower too before. Like I understand, and Max understands like the logic behind Reliquary Tower being a safety blanket. You don't absolutely do not need Reliquary Tower in a
No.
deck. It's just a card I like to run, and I totally understand why people like to run it. And it's the most frequently ran utility land, actually. If you look on
Yes.
EDH Rec, statistically speaking, and I don't know if it was ever in a precon.
Yes.
Was it in a precon? Okay.
The Commander 14 for sure, and I think one other one.
Okay, so but it's not like it was in every one of
No.
the precons. Like some.
I got the new promo the other day.
Oh,
I
you
played.
did?
I played League.
Oh, that's such a good looking Reliquary Tower. Did that go into one of your decks?
I
or
haven't
was
put it in
you
yet.
didn't
It's
put anything?
still,
Okay.
still sitting in my League box in a sleeve. I'm like, I don't know what, because I have multiple foils. I have the F&M foil. I have the original foil, and now I have the new promo. Is just like,
Yeah, I like that one a lot. But yeah, it's in twice as many decks as the next highest utility land on EDH Rec.
Yep.
94, just under 100,000 decks.
Wow. So basically to finish out this question, so if I'm running white, like mainly a white deck, I have to put in Mistveil Plains. It's like the #1 utility land on my list for white.
And that's Mistveil Plains puts a card in the bottom of your library if
Yep,
you control.
if you control 2 or more white permanents.
Okay.
And it is a plane, so it is fetchable.
Yes, which is a big deal.
Yep. For blue, I have to run Talaria West.
Okay.
It's like the first land that would go in as a utility land for blue. Black is Bajuka Bog. And then red, I kind of ran into an issue, but if I'm running mono red, it's got to be Valcut. Has to be.
In mono or even two color Valkut's pretty often worth running in two colors.
And then green, I don't play green, so I couldn't find a card.
Well, that was technically my next question was like lands you tend to run in most decks. Do you have any of those like that, Max? Where like if I'm playing green, this almost always goes in. If I'm playing blue, this almost always goes in.
Yeah. So like if I'm playing red, I always include my haste enablers, Handwear Garrison, Flamekin Village, that's the other one. Those are the two I automatically slot into any red deck right away. White, Mistveil Plains, I agree with. Amiria, the land that lets you fetch stuff.
Particularly in mono white.
In mono white, yep, just because you're running all those planes, why not? Blue, I like Talaria West. I also like the one that lets you anticipate.
Halimar Depths.
That one.
Does it anticipate? You can
It's
rearrange the
pretty
top
much a
three.
scry 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a
I guess
Sensei's Divining Top
you
ability.
can't put them on the bottom. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. There you go.
Otherwise, I mean, I don't play black, so I can't speak to that.
Just gotta say Bajuka Bog, because
Yeah.
it's like the best utility land in black, in my opinion.
Phyrexian Tower, I guess, if I had one and was playing black, just as a sack outlet.
True.
There's not a lot of downside to Phyrexian Tower either.
No. And green, I'm with Chris. There's no big green land that pops in my head just because you're just ramping into forests if you're playing green.
Yeah.
I do tend to play green, but I don't have one for green either. I put down Bajuka Bug if I'm in black, and at this point I've got Scavenger Grounds in all my decks just because there's not a lot of downside to it, and it's saved my butt a couple times. If I'm playing tribal, and if I happen to have one, I would say Cavern of Souls. I've got 2 tribal decks, and there's a Cavern in both of them. So if I built another tribal deck, I would put Cavern in that as well. If the deck has creatures worth stealing, and not all of them do, Homeward Path. Like I have some decks that just are running trash creatures that I don't care if you take. My mono white deck, for example, doesn't have a Homeward Path because if you want to steal Elspeth tokens, I don't care.
Right.
And I have a few sack Elwood, so even if you go steal DeGero, I can probably sack him in response anyway. So like, but there are decks where I'm like, like my landfall deck. I'm like, man, I do not want you taking that 1919 Multani or something away from me and swinging back at me with it. So that's the kind of so that deck definitely has a Homeward Path in it. If they draw a lot, I mean, or even if they don't draw that, my decks all draw. That's how I built
I was going to say, Dana, you draw all the cards.
Reliquary Tower is in most of my decks. I think it's not in mono white Jeru, but I think it's in almost the rest of my decks.
Is it going to be in Varina?
I don't know. I haven't decided yet. I'm struggling with that. Number one, I'm delaying actually building it beyond because I'll be annoyed if I show up at the shop and there's 2 other Varina decks at some point in time. So I want to wait and like make sure no one else is playing the deck. Which is stupid, but that's just how my brain works, so that's where we're at.
It's kind of how our shop works, to be honest. Like, yeah, it's pre-con season, so everybody kind of has them, but if you wait 2 or 3 months, you won't see half as many.
Or people threaten to build a deck, like everyone's like, I'm going to build Najila, and I don't think there's one Najila deck, but like I thought I would see a bunch of them.
Yeah.
I heard a bunch of Peer and Toothy decks, and I think finally somebody built one, but people threatened to and didn't ever do it. So I'm going to give it a few more weeks before I actually build it. Probably not in that deck because there's enough stuff that cares about you discarding in the way I'm building it, and I'm running quite a few madness cards on top of it that are nice to discard at times, so I probably won't in that deck. What else do I have here? Corehaven. I like Corehaven in white. Number one, there's not a lot of downside to it.
You have to be in white to do that, yep.
Maze of Ith doesn't tap for mana, so that can kind of be a problem sometimes, but Corehaven taps for mana. There's not a lot of downside to it. It's pretty cheap to activate, and it saves my butt plenty of times as well.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I've got a few of them. It's not in the reserve list. It's like a $6 card, so it's relatively easy to pick up. If you want to jam Corehaven in a white deck, it's pretty easy to do. Blue deck, I did put Teleri West down, but I usually has to have a land I care about getting, or something that costs 0 I care about getting. So like if I'm playing blue-black, where I probably have Cabal Coffers, I would care about it. Or if I'm playing, blue-green, and I maybe have a Cradle or something, or enough permanents that nick those is usually scary.
Well, see, I like Teleri West too, especially if you're playing mono blue. It gives you the option to two-drop Pact.
Yes, right.
Which then
can
set you up to jam a threat that you want to jam, and you know that you have protection for it to back it up.
Yeah. Or even like sometimes it's worth it, if you're playing, a deck that has the zero drop rocks and you are drawing enough cards that you have extra stuff. You just treat it as a 3-mana way to put a rock into your hand that you're going to play for free.
I did that last weekend.
Oh, did you? Nice. And if a deck's black, I'm playing Urborg. Maybe not mono black, but like if the deck has black in it, I usually am running Urborg to Yawgmoth just for the color fixing.
I've actually been pulling away from Urborg. Especially in our meta, it seems to be helping out more people than it's actually helping me.
There's enough times it can screw you, and I try to not play it unless I know I'm in a position where I either need it or I've got like a card out that can take advantage of it. But absolutely, there's been enough times either it's given someone an advantage or someone else has played an Urborg, and it saved my butt.
Yep.
So you do have to be a little bit cautious. I mean, I shouldn't say there's no downside because there absolutely can be a downside, but it also can be super, super useful to have out. And to just not have to care about your black mana then at that point in time.
Exactly.
So what lands do you think people need to run more or are underrated or both?
Oh, I have a big list for this.
Awesome.
So the ones I think people need to run more, and I don't see a whole lot of them, are lands that give you like a big advantage. Like Vault of the Archangel, for instance. I don't see that a lot.
And it does cost you 5 mana to use because it's 4 to activate and then it uses itself. But
Death Touch and Lifelink, I mean, that's just huge. And if you're playing it in black-white, most of the time your creatures, you're playing a tokenish style deck, or your creatures are small and they don't have much versatility the way that they are.
And it's so easy for your opponents, because I've done this a bunch of times, to forget your opponent played Vault of the Archangel. So it's just sitting there and they've got like 4 mana free and you're like, okay, they're swinging at me with 5 tokens. I might as well block because maybe they're going to Wrath and they want to see if they can sneak some damage through or something.
Right.
Because they've kept that Wrath of God mana free, so I'm like, okay, I might as well eat the tokens rather than take the damage. Because that's a thing that I've seen people do a ton of times, where they like make that suicide swing because they know they're going to Wrath anyway. Oh, I might as well block. And then Vault of the Archangel gets turned. I'm like, I forgot that got played 4 turns ago.
I've done it in Alesha where I activate it before attacks.
Just so they know it's coming.
And they're just like, cool. And I attack, and then they're like, okay, I'll block here, here, and here. I'm like, Death Touch. And they're like, oh, yeah, that has Death Touch,
Not
too.
just lifelink,
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, white-black, I would probably run Vault of the Archangel with most white-black.
Yeah, but I mean, just like lands like that in general that are going to give you the advantage much more than anything else.
Yep.
Kessig Wolf Run would be the one I'd go from that cycle.
And green and red being able to give something trample, and is it plus X plus O?
Plus X plus O and trample for X, red, green.
Yeah, that's the trample alone. Even if it was just like red green to give a creature trample is oftentimes worth it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the 2 Boros ones, that one gives double strike and one gives +2/+0 and haste and vigilance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean those I don't see a whole lot of, but then again it's Boros.
It's Boros. but right, I would still run them in a Boros stack.
Yes.
Because again, they don't come in and play tap. They tap for colorless. There's not a lot of downside. You usually have room for some utility lands, and they can swing a game. So what else do you have on your list there, Chris?
Well, so that's cards that I think people should play. Now, underrated cards. I have a wonderful card called Arcane Lighthouse, which we just discussed. I don't see that played hardly enough. The amount of Lightning Greaves that I see running around our store, Swiftfoot Boots, any of that, and then people are running all this target removal, and as soon as they're suited up, they're like, oh, I can't do anything. That's why you need Arcane Lighthouse.
Arcane Lighthouse does solve a lot of problems,
It does.
and it doesn't have much downside to it.
No, I need more of them for that specific reason.
So do you have any max? Because I have a whole bunch I can go through. So
I still don't see a lot of land destruction in our shop. Like we just talked about, we always put in Strip Mine, Ghost Quarter, but I don't see other people running those. So when they flip that Growing Rights or they flip that Storm the Vaults, now that the new Shaley deck is, Sahili, deck is out, we need ways to deal with those lands right away, or that Maze of It that somehow is always on the field and I forget about. Us, all three of us run it really well, but I don't see anyone else in the shop run a lot of land destruction.
no, I really don't either. I mean, every now and then I'll see a Ghost Quarter,
Right.
but I never see Strip Mines, even though Strip Mine's not an expensive card.
It is now.
It is now.
Oh, is it?
It's like $20-some.
What?
Yeah, we commented on this. This is funny. We
Like 2
commented
weeks
on
ago.
this. But also on the last year's show, we're talking about it. We made the same comment about Strip Mine, all of us. Like, people need to run. You should have Strip Mine in every deck. We all were like, yeah, and it's cheap. It's like $5. And then we also commented, Wasteland, however, as good as it isn't as good as Strip Mine. And Wasteland's like 35 or 40. Strip Mine's now over 20. It's like 22 or 23, and Wasteland's like 25. So they're almost the same price now. Wasteland and Strip Mine.
I went to buy
Holy
one from
crap.
I went to buy one from Phil the other day, and I'm like, never mind. I don't want to pay $20-some for this today.
But it hasn't had a printing in forever.
Yeah.
From the vault.
It won't get
lands.
printing because it's banned in like everything.
Yes, I mean
So,
maybe in a
The
like
Expedition was
EMA
the
or
last
something.
one.
Oh, that's right, Expedition. That's right. But even then, okay, so you had Expedition, you had EMA, or excuse me, Expedition, and from the vault. Prior to that, what was the printing?
Fourth edition?
Fourth edition.
Fourth or fifth edition?
Yeah,
Yeah.
20
No,
some
it would have
years
been fourth
ago.
edition because it didn't have a mana or a symbol on it.
Right.
And from the vault, nobody. That was a long time ago at this point. An Expedition is a $200 card, I think.
Yeah. More than that probably now.
So I guess we shouldn't be surprised.
Wow.
Well, I don't know if I've told this. Sorry, online. I know I've told you guys. There's a card shop in Wausau, Wisconsin, called Johnny C's.
Johnny C's.
And it's a cool shop if you're near Wausau. But I stop by through there once in a while when I'm driving through, if I'm in the area, because they have every single ever. So for an actual physical card shop, if you want singles and you don't want to wait to order them, it's better than, like, no place in town, even our LGS, just doesn't have every single, and Johnny C's does. So I was in there buying singles 2 years ago, I think, and just BSing with the guy a little bit as he's like getting my stuff out. And I noticed in the cabinet he had a thing of Strip Mines in their single thing, and it was like, I don't know, 4 inches high. I mean, there was hundreds of Strip Mines in this pile. And I'm like, is that all Strip Mines? And he said, yeah, that's the card we sell. We sell more Strip Mines than any card coming through the shop, just period.
Huh.
Wow.
They must have a huge commander crowd then.
Probably. But and they sell online too, so
Okay.
I'm sure it's a combination of the two. But he said, yeah, Strip Mines is the thing we just churned through. So that doesn't surprise me in that, like we said, you put it in every commander deck. There's no situation where if you had a Strip Mine, you wouldn't run it unless it's $22. Then
Right.
Apparently that's Max's limit.
Yep. This week it was my limit.
What else makes your list there, Max, of things people need to play more? Because I'm totally agreement. People need to run more land destruction lands.
Also, like, lands that help you recur stuff from the graveyard. Some of these are going to be on later in the show, I'll mention, but like Academy Ruins, the one that lets you bring an artifact back.
Yeah.
Like that, anything that lets you get something from your graveyard back to your hand or the battlefield is just value for 2 mana. Especially if you need that key piece and you have no way to recur your entire graveyard.
Well, I think sometimes Academy Ruins too, because I have an Academy Ruins that I don't remember where I got it, but I have one. Because it's not a cheap card. It's $20-some.
Yep.
But mentally, I sometimes be like, well, I don't think of Academy Ruins unless I'm building an artifact deck for some reason. I don't know if that's true. There's a lot of times, most decks have artifacts in them anyway.
Right.
That's another card on my list, is another one that people think of only in artifact decks.
Okay, well, we'll see which one that is in a minute. But yeah, Academy Ruins, I think, is one that you should just run. I mean, if you're playing blue and you have one, it's probably worth running because there's just going to be someone's going to kill your Lightning Greaves or someone's going to blow up your
Sad Robot.
right? And there's plenty of times bringing that back to top of your library is worth it.
Yeah.
Does Academy Ruins tap for blue or only colorless?
Just colorless.
Yeah.
Okay.
And but it's a 1 in the blue activation
Yep.
cost.
So, speaking of your artifacts.
Yes.
I think that people should play Inventors Fair more.
That was your response last year. Was it?
Was it?
Yes. Yeah, it was.
Just because, I mean, even if you're running, say, 5 mana rocks, you may not get any of the triggers on it, but the ability to maybe have it come up could be worth it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's enough times the artifact you go get is something that's super impactful
Yep.
to the game. But even if you're running a Crucible Worlds in your deck, and I mentioned this last time, being able to sack your Vendor's Fair, go grab a Crucible, play a Crucible, and you automatically have a land in your graveyard because you just sacked the Vendor's Fair and then replaying Vendor's Fair. I mean, it's not like a crazy power play, but like that's pretty fair value.
That is pretty good.
Yeah.
I actually have a newer card on here though as well.
Which one's that?
Arch of Orzaka.
Ooh, from Ixalan.
Five mana to draw a card?
Yep, with Ascend. So once you hit Ascend, you always have Ascend.
Yes.
You can never get rid of it. And just the ability to draw a card off of a land if you have nothing else going on, why not use it?
I'm running it in mono white Jeru because
Yep.
it's mono white. That's so like I wouldn't run it in mono green or something, mono black,
Mono blue or
Blue,
anything like
right.
that. Yep.
mono white. There's not number one. You're playing white. You're playing one color, and I would say mono red probably applies too. So you don't necessarily need to worry about having perfect mana fixing because this is one color. You can get away with
Right.
more utility lands. Very often you wind up with. It's pretty easy to hit the Ascend trigger just in general. And then it's a mana sink. If you don't use it for 3 straight games, there's almost no downside.
No, and it taps for a colorless mana
Yeah.
for you too. So
So like if that's all you do with it for like 3 or 4 games in a row, there's not much downside. And then you hit that game where you've gotten ahead for whatever reason. You've got free mana and you're out 2 cards in hand. Well, I might as well friend a turn. When I didn't wind up needing to use this Path to Exile or something because nothing crazy came out, I might as well draw a card.
Right.
Yeah, in those 2 colors, I think that's a really, really good card. I like it as well. And I've been happy with it in Jero. Any special ones from you, Max?
No, I named my 2 essentially.
I have so many more.
The one I was going to say was I think I mentioned playing Scavenger Grounds in all my decks.
Yep.
I think people in general need more graveyard hate, just period.
Yeah.
So at the very least, even if you're going to be greedy and not run your Relic of Progenitus or run a Torment's Crypt or whatever, man, put a Scavenger Grounds in your deck because there's just so many times somebody needs to hit something to deal with whatever crazy shenanigans are about to play, including me in that Verena deck where I'm going to put a ton of stuff in my graveyard and then reanimate it or Rise of the Dark Realms it or whatever. Being able to respond to that is huge. So people just need to run more graveyard to hate in general. And if you want to be greedy, at least run a Scavenger Grounds and at least put a Bajuka Bug in that black deck. Last time around, Max said specifically Boseiju.
I love
which are one people
Boseiju.
need to run more often. And I would be on board with that.
It's expensive now though.
It is.
It's
yeah.
like $30.
It has crept up pretty good. You said I had a few more here, Chris, you wanted to say.
Yep, I'm just gonna go through them in list.
Yeah.
If you guys want to talk about any of them, cool. Last ones are Seagate Wreckage.
That's tap if you can draw a card if you're at no cards in hand.
For 3 mana, one of them has to be a colorless mana to do it. But
Okay,
it's
yep.
another utility land that, worst comes to worst, you're getting a card out of
And
it.
some kind of mono red aggro deck where your hand is just going to be empty.
Mirror Pool.
That was one of Max's calls last time. 'Cause Max is a Mirror Pool fan. I like Mirror
I
Pool a
am
lot
a
too.
Mirror Pool fan.
I only see you guys play it. I don't see it much out of anyone
I don't
else
think I've
that I
ever
play
seen anyone
against.
else play it in our shop, at least.
Yeah.
Most people don't like the tempo hit and how much it costs to actually use its abilities.
It does come
but
to play tapped. That is unfortunate.
But it's got so much versatility. You can either make a token, you can copy a spell, you can still tap it for mana if worst comes to worst. So,
and it doesn't need to be a bomb spell. I've copied Factor Fiction a couple times. That's almost always worth the 3 mana and sacking a
just the
land to
dig.
get a second Factor Fiction trigger off it.
yeah.
And you can technically the way it's worded, the way it works, the token copy you're making, it lets you essentially flash in a token because you can do it before end of turn when someone has forgotten that it's out and they're doing the math and they're like, okay, I can take this much damage next turn, I'll be fine. Then you flash in that copy essentially at the end of their turn, and then on your turn it's able to swing. And you could kind of screw up people's math with that card, which I've done multiple times as well.
it's definitely saved me in Dramoka where someone tries to take out like my Angelic Skirmisher. Okay, cool. I'll make a copy of it quick and let the original die.
Yeah.
I've made copies of Archangel Thune in that deck, and that's just mean.
I want to see someone copy a Elish Norn once. Have 2 Elish Norns out. Oh, it'd be so good.
Because you'll just get it'll die, but
it'll
but you'll get the state-based action when the token hits the field, where it'll immediately give everything another minus.
So you can just nuke someone's board and then just be like, rawr.
Yeah, even that would probably be worth it. If you had an Elish Norn out and you made a copy of that Elish Norn
to give everything minus
just
4,
to
minus
people
4.
who think they're safe above it, like, oh, my creature's a 1/1, but it's still because of the first Elish Norn.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I like Mirror Pool a lot as well.
I also have the creature lands. I don't see many people running these.
Yeah.
Some of them are garbage, I will admit.
For sure.
But
particularly in Commander, they're weaker than they are in other formats.
Like the newer ones that came out of like the Battle for Zendikar block that all have special abilities to them, like one has lifelink, one has hexproof. That kind of stuff would be cool.
Yeah.
You know, that stuff's worth it. And then the last one is actually one that you play a lot, Dana. And it's called Terrain Generator.
I love that. That's my next one I was going to do after you're done is Terrain Generator. I love Terrain Generator.
Yes. I think you were the only person I ever see play that card.
I saw someone
Blake
last
plays
week. I think Blake plays it. And Terrain Generator, for those you don't know, it taps for a colorless, or you can tap it for 2 colorless, and you can put a basic land card from your hand into play tapped.
It's value. If you have nothing else going on, let's start ramping some lands out of my hand.
Yeah.
Especially if you're getting flooded and all you're doing is drawing lands. Let's just keep throwing them into play.
Right. And it's in a deck that's like I played a mono blue my Talrand deck. It does a ton of work because the deck has like 35 instants in it. Not all, they're not counter spells either. It's just like a lot of cantrips. But if I come around and I'm like, it's more valuable for me to have 1 mana next turn rather than play 2 cantrips or something. You can do it at instant speed too. You don't need to do it on your turn.
Right.
And then again, like I said, it's kind of a flash thing where the land comes into play tap, but it's immediately untapped because it's ended someone's turn.
Exactly.
So yeah, now Terrain Generator I think is definitely underplayed, particularly in monocolor decks that aren't green.
I could see it even in 2-color decks because it's not really going to hurt you too much.
Yeah, right.
The ability to put a land in.
You probably have to have enough basics, and I think a lot of people in 2-color decks aren't running enough basics maybe.
Yeah.
But if you have enough basics, if you're running 14 plus basics, which you probably should be.
Especially if you're in 2 colors.
Particularly in 2 colors, and if you've got anyone playing a Blood Moon in your shop, you don't want to be too greedy.
Says the man running Blood Moon.
Am I the only one with Blood Moon in a deck?
I haven't seen Blood Moon in a multiplayer game in a long time.
I've got it in Lathlas.
Okay, I can see that in mono red.
Yeah. So. Okay, so the other end of the spectrum, overrated or overplayed utility lands. What do you got? Reliquary Tower.
Reliquary Tower.
So your thinking has changed in the last calendar year.
Yes. And the only reason is this. I didn't go off of stats online or anything like this. I did this off of personal play with people.
Sure.
I see Reliquary in everybody's deck that I ever see them playing.
Yes.
And a lot of times I think it's a waste of their deck.
Yes.
Like a landslide in their deck. So I think it's overrated because it gets played way too often. If it's, yes, it does. It has that cushion where you could.
Sure.
You know, so you have 8 cards in hand. You don't have to discard 1. But a lot of times when people play it, they're not playing massive amounts of card draw. So it's doing them nothing aside from tapping for a colorless mana source.
Right.
I understand the logic. We've mentioned this before. Like, if you need that 8th card to win the game, you've got bigger problems. Your best 7 should get it done. And even if you're drawing 14, being able to pick the best 7 out of those 14 should still get it done.
Exactly.
And there's enough times putting stuff in the graveyard is actually beneficial. I still like it, but when you say it's overrated and overran, you are not wrong.
Yeah.
Myself included. There's decks I probably just don't need it, and I still run it because I just like being able to hold that giant fistful of cards.
You know, that being said, Chris makes a good point. You know, in the past we've talked about, hey, that guy just drew 14 cards. He has a Reliquary Tower. We're going to kill him first.
Sure, it can do that. Absolutely.
If you aren't running Reliquary Tower, you might have just picked the best 7 of the 14 cards you had, but you might be less threatening to me because you don't have that additional 7 cards in your hand.
Yep. I've actually thought about it, and I think that, in my opinion, and this is probably way wrong, people argue this with me, I think Thought Vessel is better than Reliquary Tower.
Yeah,
because actually ramping you're getting 1 additional, but you're also getting the Reliquary Tower effect.
There's one huge problem with Thought Vessel, though, and that's you can't get a foil. So, like...
And it's only been played once.
Right.
Of course, he's the one who says this.
But no, you're absolutely right. And if I like looking at my decks, because I knew Reliquary Tower was going to come up here because we talked about it last year and we've continued to talk about it, and it's a legit thing that you don't need it. The only deck of mine I would say probably should keep it would be my Sphinx deck because I draw a ton of cards in that deck, And there's a lot of times I win by drawing a ton of cards, which then one of those is a scroll rack, which then lets me turn those 30 cards into the next 30 down.
Yep.
And to find whatever piece I need to win the game with. But aside from that, I don't need it in all my decks. Absolutely,
I've
not.
actually been
That's the
cutting
one deck where I
Yeah.
would run it.
Yeah, I've been cutting it a lot out of my decks, and it's just I love the card, but
Yes.
I'd rather have something else in its slot.
It's like an unnecessary dessert that you don't need after the meal. You don't need it. You don't need that. You just had a steak and potatoes. You don't need that big piece of cake. But
I haven't eaten breakfast.
you want the
we
cake,
need to stop.
right? Max, any from you here?
Overrated?
Overrated.
Let me see here. I have one written down. Gaia Reach Sanitarium. It's similar to Seagate Wreckage, where you pay 2 and you tap it, and each player draws a card, then discards a card.
And I've seen a few of those around
I've
here.
seen quite a few of those around here, and I saw some in Vegas and in Minneapolis. Granted, I'm not a fan of helping my opponents, but I think you really need to set up for that card. Like, you want to make sure your opponents don't have any cards in hand, so all you're doing to them is making them mill themselves, essentially.
See, now, that is one of them that's actually on my list to possibly try an Alesha. Just
Okay.
for the
Well, sure.
discardability.
Right.
Because it's actually beneficial to me.
To
Yeah, I
discard.
may be giving you a card, but I'm actually getting the ability to discard into my graveyard because I play
Right.
with the graveyard so much.
It's very build-around-ish.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's what Max's kind of point was, that it's good if you have a plan, whether it's
Right.
your opponents to have no cards in hand, so I got to pitch theirs, or like in your case where you want the discard.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're just doing that thing where you're giving everyone a chance to pick to
Get rid
get
of that
one new
basic
card
land.
and ditch their basic land, and that's gonna burn you more than it helps you.
Right.
It's that Howling Mind math. I think people forget. They're like, well, I'm drawing a card. Everyone, my opponent's to draw a card, but we're all just getting an extra card, and I need the extra card. Well, no, your opponents all are trying to kill you probably, or will be before the game is over. So you're giving the people trying to kill you 3 extra cards. I think that's the math with Gaia Reach too, unless you have a plan like with Alesha where you want to be able to pitch something in the graveyard to immediately bring it back with Alesha.
Yeah. Every time I see a Howling Mine or a Kami of the Crescent Moon, the first thing that crosses my mind is, okay, I'm playing against a combo deck. Because they're trying to dig as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And then it turns out they're not. And
They
I'm just like, why are you playing these cards then?
Yeah, they just haven't thought through the full ramifications of it.
Yep.
Yes, for sure. You're exactly right.
My other one is Maze of Ith.
That was that was a choice from you last time through.
I think it's overrated. I see too many times where people forget it doesn't tap for mana,
Yep.
Mhm.
and then they're stuck. They're one short from casting their commander or that big bomb spell they need to win the game. I also see people maybe tap it for mana due to like a Chromatic Lantern or an Urborg, and then realize, I'm now open to a kill shot next turn because I tapped that to cast something.
Yep. I've seen it in decks that are too many colors, where it's actually a hindrance.
Yeah.
Yes.
In my opinion, Maze of Ith shouldn't be in anything more than a 2-color deck. If you're running 3 colors, I don't think you need Maze.
I would agree. You
Yeah.
can't afford to have Maze at that
Yep.
point. Even if you're not counting it as a land, it still sucks up your land drop for the turn. Like, even if you're running an extra land for Maze of Ith for that purpose, you still got to use a land drop to play it. And that's also not great.
Exactly.
And I've seen enough times, too, where people have it in, and they don't think through the ramifications of Maze of Ith, kind of like Howling Mine. They're like, I'm playing a Maze of Ith. Well, I can remove the scariest creature from swinging at me or stop someone from proccing a...
Oh, it's got Lightning Greaves on it.
It's got... There's...
Right.
for the most part, anything so scary you want to keep it away from hitting you is oftentimes a hexproof for Shroud.
Yep.
Not every time. I mean, there's enough times I've killed somebody without stuff like that, but...
And not even Greaves or Boots. Like, Heroic Intervention is all over our shop now. I
Yeah.
mean,
It is.
right there, I'm going to make my stuff hexproof and indestructible. Great, you just wasted 2 mana tapping that Core Haven or tapping that Maze of Ith.
We also have plenty of token decks and go wide decks, and so who cares if you untap that one thing after Crater Hoof came down?
Right. You needed to stop Crater Hoof. That's the trick, everybody.
Yes. Right, yeah.
Pro tip. Tip from Max.
I am on board with the Maze for sure. I'm down to 1 deck. I actually looked after reading that and stuff and seeing, because last year in the show you guys commented about how often I run Maze of Ith, because I did. I absolutely used to. I'm down to my Glissa deck. That's the one deck where I have it right
I
now.
have my
Yeah.
one, and I ran it in my Mogus for 1v1 just because we were playing control decks, and I just wanted to keep people off of us.
And the whole reason I have it in Glissa too at this point is because at one point I traded for the Judge foil that has like the one-time art on it. And which looks great. And I'm like, it's literally still in the deck only because like I like the art. I want to show it off.
The way I would summarize your Glissa deck is it's more of a Golgari control deck.
That's probably
to
accurate.
a point.
Yeah.
Yep. Where you don't really drop big nasties too often. It's just I'm just going to chip shot you here and there and here and there, and then all of a sudden, oh, now I just kill everybody.
And be really difficult to attack.
Yep.
Meanwhile, I've drawn a ton of cards and got a ton of advantage until I'm able to. It's grindy, and actually, it was a much better deck 3 years ago when people were worse at Commander. Nowadays, it's not as good as it once was.
It still makes you think when you play against it because, like, okay, everything's got death touch, so. Am I okay with losing something to get rid of that to even put 3 damage through to them or whatever?
Right. My one on here was because I saw 2 of them played this week, both of which did nothing, which Mystifying Maze. 2 different people dropped Mystifying Mazes this week. 4 mana to activate and 1, so it uses itself up too. So that's 5 mana it sucks up to Maze of Ith a thing. Essentially, or Core Haven a thing, basically.
Well, it's a little different.
It exiles.
It exiles, and when I saw that in your show notes, I agree with you that it is overrated, especially because if you go and exile something with a really good ETB,
right? Yes,
you're just giving your opponent value.
Yeah. Now, there's also times where you're like, well, this thing's coming at me with 2 equipment on it, and you get to knock those equipment off,
right?
Or destroy the auras. But for the most part, again, same with Maze of Ith, if someone's swinging at you with something suited up, it probably has Hexproof or Shroud. Not always, but it probably does. And that's a lot of mana. Now, you said you can kill a token with it, and it's not a terrible card, but I can't think of ever seen a situation where it's changed the outcome of a game. I'm sure it has, but to me, it always feels like that's not doing any good here at all. And it also has a downside of you've left your 5 mana up. And if someone knows, obviously, if they're paying attention, he's got Mystify Maze out. I'm just not going to attack him.
Right.
So
or they're the threat on board, and
right.
you bite the bullet to swing at them to leave them open for the rest of the table to come at them.
Right. Yeah. So they had to use their 5 mana, and that's it.
That's politics, buddy.
Yeah.
That's good work.
And there's times I can go the other way around. If you're playing a deck with a ton of instant speed stuff, maybe that 5 mana won't get blown away. Maybe you can still utilize it if you don't use the maze. I mean, that happens too. But like, there's enough times it doesn't, where you just can't afford to leave it up, or if you do, you don't have anything else to do with it, and you're just wasting your mana. So that was on my list. Also had Opal Palace on my list of cards that are, I think, are number 1. I think it's in a lot of decks because it's in pre-cons. People might have left it in.
Yep.
So that's
I haven't seen it too often in the store. I mean, I think the last time I saw it was actually in an Atraxa deck,
which makes total sense.
Yeah, which was complete. I was like, oh no, that's gross. No, don't do that.
Right. Or any type of graft +1/+1 counter deck.
Yeah, if you're playing Pure Toothy or you're playing like Crush the Blood Braided, it makes sense because you're going to be doing things with those +1 counters. Or maybe if your commander is like it swings for 6 damage or something, and you're like being able to make it a 7/7 when it comes into play turns you from a 3-hit commander clock or 4-hit commander clock to a 3-hit commander clock. But you should have a lot of these cards are, you should know why you're running it, not just be blindly plugging into your deck. Have a reason it's in your deck.
Yeah, all the lands that I chose for that I thought were underrated and overrated are cards that I've seen personally. I didn't go off of the stats online for them, so that's why I chose that.
Okay.
Because I have another one for you.
All right, what is it?
Myriad Landscape.
Okay.
I believe this card is overrated. I've watched so many people play this in like 2 and 3 color decks, and I'm just like, why?
Especially in a 3-color deck, I would definitely not.
Because you have to go for,
because it's the same name.
Yep, you have to go for identical cards, so it's actually not really setting you ahead.
I think in a mono deck with no ramp. Sense.
Definitely in mono.
Boros.
But I've also seen Myriad Landscape played a lot. I like Myriad Landscape a lot.
I do as well.
I've actually been looking at that. We discussed this a few weeks ago. How is it better than a bounce land or something? And I'm actually going to start pulling them out of my decks for a card I'm going to talk about later.
Yeah, I'm running less Myriad Landscapes than I was this time last year.
The only deck that I played it in that it probably shouldn't have been was in Ural. Due to the simple fact of Ural is 5 mana, and he dies a lot, and I want to get as much out as possible, lands out as possible, to suit him up immediately and try and kill someone right away.
And that turn 1, sometimes you're like, turn 1 Myriad Landscape, I don't care. Yep. And then if you don't get to use it until turn 7, well, maybe that's fine too. Like there's times when you're like, oh, I have things to do, but on turn 7, when I wind up not casting this instant spell or something, then I'll crack it.
Yeah, I immediately thought of this because I played against a guy who was playing Ramos, playing 5 colors, and he played one, and I'm like, why?
Yeah, right. You have when you have access to real actual ramp.
Yeah.
Man, it should not be in a deck with green. Just full stop. It should not be in a deck with green. Let alone a 5-color deck with green.
Yeah.
So I have one more if anyone else has any.
I'm good.
And this is actually a lump sum of 5 cards actually together.
Okay.
I believe the hideaway lands are overrated.
That was Max's overrated answer last time. Interesting. All right.
A lot of them, how you have to activate them is really hard. Like the green one's probably the easiest one.
Yeah. The white one in a token deck's fairly easy.
Yep. But now we're talking about how everyone should be playing strip mine and everything. If I see someone go hideaway and I have it set up, I'm just like, yeah,
that's good value.
Bye-bye.
That's good value.
Let's get rid of that crater hoof that's under there.
I like Mossfort Bridge is the best one, and I like it.
Yep.
And I ran it, but I think they're not. I think for the most part they're not good enough. I think Mossfort Bridge is good. I don't know if it's good enough though. I think the white one whose name is escaping me right now.
I don't remember any of their names aside from Mossfort Bridge.
Yeah.
And actually, the red one you can cast if I think your creatures have dealt. Someone's taken 10 damage, or you've dealt 10 damage.
If an opponent has taken 10 damage, yeah.
And there's some decks where that's doable too. I ran it in way back when I had first built. What's the green red dragon from Atarka World Renderer, because Atarka has double strike, so like Atarka alone almost always triggered it, as well as it gave all your dragons double strike, so almost every dragon in the deck triggered it. So I ran it in there too. But there was so many times when like you play it and you look at whether it's Mossfort Bridge or that one, look at your top 4 and you're like, man, none of these are things I want to have to sacrifice a land to put into play. I wish I would have drawn these cards. I don't want them. I don't want one of them underneath Mossfort Bridge and the rest of the bottom of my library. I wanted them right where they were.
Right.
It's also, and I've gotten good turns with Mossfort Bridge where I've made the attack to trigger it, and then someone's done something and I've cracked it to reveal a privileged position or something. I can't remember what it is, but like I remember doing that. But there was a lot more times I remember being disappointed in what it was doing.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so easy to whiff these days with people running more rocks or anything like that.
Right. And I guess it isn't a whiff, but is it worth doing?
Right.
If you hit 2 lands and a mana rock and a counter spell, that's not.
I want to bait someone with one of these. Just be like, you look at them, you're like, you put a basic land underneath there, seeing how they have like strip mine out, and you're like, what's up?
put your Riftstone portal underneath it. And they blow up your Mossfort Bridge, and you're like, boom! Now I got Savannas.
Nice.
Even that still probably wouldn't be worth doing. That still wouldn't be worth it.
It also doesn't help that Mossfort Bridge specifically has been in a bunch of the precons, so just people have them.
So you see people running it because they haven't taken it out of the deck just because it's in the precon, and then it just doesn't do anything at all. I like that. He said, Max, you had no more overrated ones?
No more overrated.
I actually had a Command Beacon was one that Chris mentioned last time, and then Max just mentioned you liking Command Beacon now. Have your thoughts on Command Beacon changed since last time around? Obviously, Max's has.
A little bit, yeah. I saw it a few times this past weekend, and after Chris's discussion last week, I'm coming around on it. I don't know if I specifically have a deck for it personally for like multiplayer EDH, but I can definitely see the benefit of it in 1v1.
Yep. 1v1 is more of a format where your deck is built around your commander.
Sure.
Because you're only playing one other player.
Right.
Now in multiplayer, we always say don't ever try to build your deck strictly around the commander, because there's 3 other players who are going to just hate that commander out of the game.
Once people figure that out, then, because it happened this weekend, I remember what the deck I was playing against. I'm like, oh, that deck screwed up their commander, and like he played it, and I'm like, immediately passed the turn, and I'm like, first thing I did, like immediately untap, draw, lignify. I'm like, aw. So yeah, like, once people realize that, they immediately just go for that, and then then it becomes a 3-player game oftentimes. So yeah, I agree with that. Being able to recast that commander though, like if it's one that gets hit a ton of times, can be pretty useful.
Right.
I don't run it, and nor do I have any decks I think want it, maybe.
I don't even have one.
If I had to guess any of your decks, it would be your Sigarda deck.
Yeah, probably. But she's also kind of tough to kill.
Yeah, she's an annoyance.
That's the thing. She's the biggest. She's the most valuable part of the deck for the most part, but she's tough to remove as well.
Yep. That's the only deck I can think personally of yours, or possibly your Edric deck if it falters, like falls on its face or something.
Yeah,
but
maybe.
that would be about it too.
Laughless, his new dragon deck.
That's actually a good one.
Well, it is a monocolor, so it's not gonna set you back to
Right.
try it at
Yeah.
least.
That's a good call. Yeah, I'll put it in there.
It's $30 though.
It is right. It's not cheap now. Yeah.
Is it really that
Yeah,
much?
It's almost
I think I
30
have like
bucks.
2 of them. I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
look now because I was digging through when I was building my Mogus deck and I put one in there and I'm just like, oh hey.
Well, this is okay. So this is a nice segue to the last thing here I wanted to do. So we did this with Monarch, where we were like talking about Monarch a year ago or something, and we're like, we need to try more Monarch. So Chris put one in a deck, and I put one in a deck, and we both been happy with Monarch.
Oh, I love it.
So is there a utility land that you guys aren't currently using that you're like, I'm going to force myself? Because I think we should do this. We'll do an experiment where we like force ourselves, like we did with Monarch, to try utility land, and then we'll report back in a month or 6 weeks and see how it worked out for us. So is there one? So what do you guys have for your utility lands you're going to force yourself to try?
I'm gonna force myself to try the Arch for Orzaka.
Okay.
My good friend Nate, who I play a lot with, actually plays it in his commander decks, and he loves it. So I want to try it and see if it's as good as he thinks it is.
Okay. Max, what's yours?
I have 2.
All right.
My first one being Buried Ruin. 2, sack it.
Ooh.
Return target artifact from your graveyard to your hand.
Yep.
I've had too many times lately in Brago where people are killing my mana rocks, and
Sure.
getting them back would be really handy if I can't get Sun Titan out or something. And the other one is
Wow.
one.
I'll quick say Buried Ruin 2, probably the same thing as Academy Ruins applies here. People, I think, get in their head that I only want to run it in an artifact deck. There's enough times it's just going to be useful.
Getting your Soul Ring back.
Or
getting
your Lightning Grease back.
It's another land that people are gonna ignore after it hits the field.
For sure.
Or
And then
your,
they're gonna forget later on when
Yeah.
you go to sack it.
getting your Mirror Battlesphere back.
Yeah.
Or any artifact.
And it's to hand, so it doesn't suck up your next draw by going to top of the library.
Right. My other one also has the word Monarch on it.
Oh, Throne of the High City?
Throne of the High City. I picked a couple up because I'm slowly getting the land base for Traxos.
Okay.
And seeing that I tend to play my hand out pretty quick, I'm going to try this land just to become the Monarch and see if I can get some more draw action.
And having that 7/7 Traxos there
Yeah, will be nice.
is a pretty good blocker to keep control of that Monarch.
That's true.
I'd like to, that one I'm really curious to
Yeah.
see if it's worth doing.
So I'm going to put Throne for sure in Dramoka as well as Traxos
All right, nice.
because I don't...
Well, Dramoka, you definitely have it
Yeah.
with flyers, and you can probably protect yourself pretty easily.
Right. And then Buried Ruin is going to go into most of my decks.
It's gonna get down to the
Nice.
point where we're gonna all be in a game with the Monarch thing going
Just
on. And we're
bounce
gonna
them.
play. We're gonna be playing our cards that steal Monarch. We're not even gonna be dealing damage. Just gonna be like,
Right.
oh, you are the Monarch. Be like, give it over here.
One thing that makes some of these cards like Buried Ruin and Throne of the High City a little bit better maybe now too is Crucible Worlds is a card that people can afford to pick up, and they actually see it in their LGS. Even when it was, obviously when it was like $75, it was out of people's price range, but also I didn't see Crucible Worlds in people's binders. I did not see them in a lot of shops cases. Our shop now has Crucibles in it at $30 or whatever it is. I've seen them. I saw one in a trade binder last week. Somebody had that they cracked that they weren't using. So having access to Crucible then makes things like Buried Ruin, which you can crack to go get your artifact and then replay it with your Crucible.
And then they destroy your Crucible and you sack it and bring Crucible back.
Right,
Just like,
right.
that was a worthless.
Yeah. or even Excavator. Runic Excavator being a card that people have access to that's very cheap makes some of these sack lands even easier to use now when you can have a much easier time of recurring and reusing them again. So I think that's a good point for those lands you want to test out as well. Actually, the one I am going to wind up trying out is Command Beacon. Because I still don't entirely feel like any of my decks want it, but it's a $30 card for a reason. I have one. People are constantly raving about it, and we've kind of been like, yeah, I think it's decent, but so I want to try it out because I want to be able to say one way or the other. It's the kind of thing when people constantly are talking about a card being good that you don't get. You probably should look into that versus just assuming everyone's wrong and you're right. So
we don't do that. What are you talking about?
So while I don't entirely get it, I probably should actually verify that I don't get it for a reason, because there's been enough times when I've seen a card that I'm like, I don't see why this is good, and then you run it and you're like, oh, now I see. So that's one of the ones that's going to be the one I experiment with and put in a deck. I haven't figured out which deck I'm going to run it in yet, but I'm going to put it in something and see how it plays out. So we'll do all of this and we'll check back in 6-8 weeks, something like that, and
Or
see
a year,
where
or-
experiments went. Right. Hopefully we won't forget.
Utility lands, round 3.
Right. Exactly.
return of the utility lands.
All right. I think that is it for the Guilds of Utility Lands show. Shadows over Utility Lands. I guess it could be Scars of Utility Lands. We'll be back next week. Until then, I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.